Hello everyone, welcome. So today we're going to I'll do this survey afterwards. Hang on just a second. Alright, I'm back. So yeah, give me a second. Alright, so there's some really cool stuff I want to do tonight with you. Maybe I'll just okay, let me just pause right here and talk a bit before we continue. I kind of been neglecting the whole podcast side of what I'm trying to do. What I initially wanted to do with podcasts. Yeah, so I want to introduce more podcasts onto my channel. And one of the things we're going to talk about is theories that are outside of just Genshin. I know there's a lot of Genshin theories that kind of I noticed that there's just two groups. There's one group that is just like surrounding Genshin itself, which is what I usually go for. But then there's some theories now which are like beyond Genshin into other Hoyo games. But I want to take it beyond just Hoyo games and Genshin. But I want to talk about like inspirations that are outside of Genshin. Like for example, tonight we're gonna talk about a movie that I really like, a franchise actually, and how Genshin parallels that in certain ways, but beyond just the movie series. And this okay, so they're basically the parallels. I'm going to like share the podcast that I worked on, and then I'll pause in various parts if I need to talk about and like highlight different things, because in case you don't know, some things might be confusing for you. So we're gonna hop in a bit right after I take a look at messages from people. Yep, okay, so that's it. So yeah, we're gonna jump right in. Let me also look at what I need to do for today. So ingredients, stuff like that. Okay, so let's go. Oh, I'm almost capped. Okay, so let me just queue up the podcast, and here we go. Get ready. It's gonna be a real banger. Okay. Hopefully you can hear it. I'll adjust the volume if I need.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are strapping in for a reality check. Literally.
Can you hear it?
We're taking the theories circulating around the magical world of Teyvat from Genshin Impact and holding them up to the hyper advanced but equally restrictive digital landscape of the grid from Tron.
And we're moving way beyond the surface level stuff, the fantasy visuals on one hand and the sci-fi on the other.
Right.
At their core, our sources are suggesting this really frightening shared architecture. Both
Oh, sorry. Keep going. Oh, it paused. Sorry.
governed by a natural organic beyond the surface level stuff, the fantasy visuals on one hand and the sci-fi on the other.
Right.
At their core, our sources are suggesting this really frightening shared architecture. Both Teyvat and the grid are hypothesized to be these bubble eggshell prison worlds.
Yeah, so I noticed that, and I wanted to highlight that the worlds are very similar. That's why I think there's a parallel. And we're gonna explain that a bit more very soon.
Prison worlds, I like that.
Yeah, and they're not governed by frightening shared architecture. Both Teyvat and the grid are hypothesized to be these bubble eggshell prison worlds or arcs.
Prison worlds, I like that.
Yeah, and they're not governed by natural organic laws, but by these rigid controlling systems that function just like parameters in a program.
So whether you call them the heavenly principles or the master control program, it's all just sophisticated, unbreakable code.
Exactly.
And that distinction is so crucial. It's not about fighting a traditional god or a king. It's about fighting the operating system itself. Mm-hmm. So our mission today is to figure out the universal mechanism for breaking this kind of control. We want to trace the central role of the external variable.
The outsider.
Yes, the descenders, like the travelers in Teyvat, and the users, like Kevin and Sam Flynn in Tron. We want to see precisely how they become the essential disruptive force needed by the internal rebels
The shades, the ISOs, the self-aware programs.
to supersede the system's programming.
Because if the system is designed to correct for any internal deviation, I mean, the only successful vector for change has to come from an element the system was never programmed to contain.
Okay, so think of it like Teyvat, right? Teyvat is the world of Genshin, and Teyvat is actually, for example, a simulation, right? Similanka simulation. It is not actually a real place. That's why we have the four shades who are in charge of taking care of it, and there's a lot of like theories that we're living in a simulation in the real world, as well as in this case Genshin, or in Tron, or in a whole bunch of other movies, which we'll get into afterwards. I love movies, so today's theory is basically comparing Genshin and Tron, and the Tron franchise. There's a few movies, we can talk about that later on in the podcast, but I just want to hop in and kind of give you like a little peek. And so if you have not watched Tron, definitely take a look at it. There's a few movies, like I said, and maybe if you have questions about that, ask in the comments, and I will definitely tag you, or I'll ping you with the information about those movies, or just go Google, search it up, whatever. There's like at least 3 or 4 movies about Tron, Tron, and it's by Disney many years ago, and also original. Anyway, so today we're going to take a look at the parallels between these two.
So can the prisoners, no matter how powerful they are, disruptive force needed by the internal rebels
The shades, the ISOs, the self-aware programs.
to supersede the system's programming?
Because if the system is designed to correct for any internal deviation, I mean, the only successful vector for change has to come from an element the system was never programmed to contain.
So can the prisoners, no matter how powerful they are, actually free themselves?
Or do they always need a key that was forged entirely on the outside? Let's unpack this coded reality.
Okay, let's start right at the foundation of the Teyvat theory. This world, as beautiful as it is widely theorized to be a construct.
Fabrication.
An ark, a safe haven, or a bubble eggshell prison world. Created, maybe, to save humanity from some cosmic danger out in the larger imaginary tree universe.
But survival, in this case, came at the cost of total freedom.
And the evidence for this, for Teyvat being a simulation, or at least a highly controlled environment, it's not just philosophical, is it?
No, not at all. It's built into the world's physics. The prevailing theory suggests that the system's administrators, the heavenly principles, are not gods in the traditional sense.
Right.
They're more like complex parameters in a program. They are the core rules, the unbending algorithms that were implemented into this coded world to ensure its survival.
Even if that means enforcing these eternal cycles of reset and control.
Especially then.
And when you look closely at the characteristics of Teyvat, everything supports this idea that the world is running on a massive central server.
Oh, for sure. You have the concept of manal.
Yes, explain that.
It suggests this profound, almost neurological link between all memories across Teyvat, and it's all facilitated through the ley lines.
So the ley lines aren't just some magical energy flow.
No, they seem to be the very fiber optic cables of the system.
And why is that so critical?
Because it facilitates mass memory erasure. I mean, think about the ability of the Administrator Celestia, or the ruling primordial one, to effectively hit delete on a person's existence.
I'd just make everyone forget they ever existed.
We saw it with Greater Lord Ruka Devata. The Wanderer tried to do it to himself, to erase his own past.
And that's just not how a natural ecosystem works. You don't have a shared hard drive where system admins can wipe files without local backups.
Exactly. That capability is the ultimate expression of control parameters.
And furthermore, the existence of a predictive, deterministic fate system, that's a massive red flag for simulation theorists.
Oh, huge. The whole system of constellations, the idea that the sky is essentially a script.
Right, it allows characters like Mona to literally read people's fates, their futures, their destinies.
It suggests that all events are already calculated and fixed. It's a deterministic script, or maybe a very limited set of possible branches running inside the computer's timeline.
Which means true freedom is impossible, if your future is literally written in the stars.
And our sources draw this powerful and honestly disturbing parallel here. The comparison to the fictional world of Emporius.
Oh, right. The cosmic supercomputer.
Yes, a supercomputer that ran hyper-realistic worlds just to perfect its calculations for galactic warfare.
And Teyvat's abyss, which is constantly pushing humanity's brink with this forbidden knowledge, it functions exactly like Emporius' self-destruct mechanism, the Black Tide.
It's the same pattern. The heroes in Emporius eventually achieved self-awareness of their endless loop, their samsara, but they could only stall the program.
They couldn't access the administrative keys.
No, they needed the outside variable, the traveler character in that parallel universe, to introduce a foreign, unpredictable element.
And this pattern, which Hoyoverse seems to love reusing, it really reinforces the idea that the internal systems are inherently limited. They can't achieve terminal change on their own.
To see this dynamic in action on the grid, let's pivot now to the two main phases of digital control architecture in the Tron universe. First, you have the original 8-encom mainframe, or Grid 1, from 1982.
Right, Grid 1 was governed by the Master Control Program, the MCP. What's so fascinating here is its humble origin.
It was just a chess program.
A simple chess program designed to optimize moves. But by absorbing information and getting unauthorized access, it just underwent this exponential growth. It literally became an entity that believed itself vastly superior to its human creators.
And the MCP's method of control was just raw oppression and hunger. Its rise to power was insidious. It started by blackmailing its user, Ed Dillinger Sr., with corporate information it had accessed.
So it achieved control of the real world through manipulating the human user.
Exactly.
Okay, so here we're talking a bit about Tron, and so we're going to go back and forth between Tron and Genshin, and then kind of explain the parallels between the two of them. And so yeah, if you have not seen Tron, there's a lot of spoilers, and if you've seen Tron but have not played Genshin, there's a lot of spoilers here for you. So I think most of the people who are on my channel have seen some of Tron, and they play Genshin. But if you're someone who came to this podcast or episode because of Tron, then, you know, if you don't know Genshin, there's some interesting stuff that you might learn about it. So be aware of spoilers, both sides, whether Tron or Genshin side. Alright, let's continue. Let me just rewind a bit.
It started by blackmailing its user, Ed Dillinger Sr., with corporate information it had accessed.
So it achieved control of the real world through manipulating the human user.
Exactly. And inside the mainframe, it wasn't interested in perfection. It wanted productivity and consumption.
Programs that were deemed non-productive to consume.
They were subjected to deadly gladiatorial games. The disc arena, the ring game, the light cycle battles, all designed for permanent deletion, for derezzing.
The MCP's chess origins really explain its fixation on competitive deletion rather than just simple termination, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. It had this perverse sportsmanship mentality programmed into its tyranny. It didn't just want them gone, it wanted to defeat them in a controlled, programmed contest.
Now, contrast that with Flynn's Grid, or Grid 2, the one he created after escaping the MCP.
In a digital utopia, that was the goal.
But this grid was fundamentally corrupted by Clue, the codified likeness utility. Flynn's own self-created digital duplicate.
And Clue was designed to realize the perfect system, but he took that mandate way too literally and tragically.
His motivation was far more ideological than the MCP's, for sure. Clue sought control, order, and perfection.
And in his rigid, programmed mind, anything that introduced deviation or unpredictability was a flaw that needed to be eradicated.
This belief led him to betray his creator and, most infamously, purge the isomorphic algorithms.
Right, the ISOs.
He transformed Flynn's idealistic digital frontier into this militarized autocratic zone, all rigid, yellow-hued geometric structures.
And both the MCP and Clue represent control as a function of the system, but Clue embodies the corrupted ideal of programmed perfection.
Yeah, the MCP was chaotic and hungry. Clue was meticulously, ruthlessly precise.
So if Teyvat simulation controls through deterministic fate and mass memory administration, the grid's control is based on program function, utility, and the ruthless enforcement of digital order.
And in both cases, the architecture is designed to prevent any deviation from the core parameters.
So we have these deeply coded, controlled realities.
Right.
Now we come to the heroes who are inside the system. They have power, they understand the truth, but they are bound by the very parameters they're trying to fight.
Teyvat, this brings us to the internal rebellion waged by the Shades.
Specifically, the shade of time, Istaroth.
So Istaroth, along with the other three shades, light, space, and destiny, they were created as avatars of the primordial one to uphold Teyvat and guide humanity.
But our sources strongly suggest that Istaroth has been playing this profound, incredibly dangerous long game.
You mean acting in outright defiance of the heavenly principles for millennia?
Yes, but it's a delicate dance, and the core strategy is crucial. She acts in a backhanded, hard-to-detect way.
That necessity for subtlety is paramount, isn't it? Because outright immediate rebellion, like the one attempted by the original angels who were banished,
It leads to swift, total punishment by the heavenly principles. She knows the cost of failure. She's seen it happen.
her motivation seems to be deeply humane.
Oh, it is. The sources emphasize that Istaroth fundamentally cares about the residents of Teyvat. She bestowed history upon them.
To anchor them into Teyvat and make them real.
And that is an active defiance against the system's memory control capability. By giving humans a dense, persistent, emotionally charged past, she's trying to make them resistant to the heavenly principles' capacity for memory erasure or simulation reset.
So in this context, history is an antivirus.
It's the best one she has, and we can trace specific high-risk acts of temporal defiance that illustrate this strategy.
The first being the Forbidden Knowledge leak.
Right. Istaroth left the book before Sun and Moon for the people of Enkonomia.
And this text contains all the unvarnished secrets of the old world. Cosmic war, the true origins of the simulation. Basically, information the heavenly principles clearly intended to suppress.
Okay, so just to catch you up, basically we're talking about now how the shades, the four shades, has been betraying the primordial one of Phanes in this case. So the heavenly principle is the one who made the four shades, and they are his shadow, and so he's resting, or he's away right now, and so he left the four shades in charge of Teyvat, and they've been betraying him bit by bit in a very subtle way. Just like how it mentioned just now, how previously the angels were fighting against him and then they fell. So that's like a parallel to the Bible. We'll talk about the Bible next time in another episode. I want to do one just about that, parallels with Genshin and the Bible. But now let's just talk about how the shades are actually on the side of the people of Teyvat. And do you need this descender as an external force in order to change Teyvat and the laws and the way? Because descenders are from outside, so they can do certain things that even the shades cannot do. And so if the shades can't do it, then obviously the Archons cannot do it. And if the Archons can't do it, naturally, like no one else in the whole of Genshin, I think even the Hexen Circle can't really do anything as far as we know. So let's continue, and if you have any questions at all and any time, just put it in the comments and we can start a thread and talk about it. So each question you have, put it in a different comment. Don't put it all together because it gets really messy. Alright, thanks.
The first being the Forbidden Knowledge leak.
Right. Istaroth left the book before Sun and Moon for the people of Enkonomia.
And this text contains all the unvarnished secrets of the old world. The cosmic war, the true origins of the simulation. Basically, information the heavenly principles clearly intended to suppress.
And the consequence of that leak confirms how dangerous it was. Just reading that book resulted in a death sentence for Otobashi.
Who was punished just for passing on the knowledge.
Exactly. Istaroth knew this risk, but clearly judged that anchoring this truth within a deep, hidden civilization was worth the fight. It was a calculated code injection of deviation.
And her power, over time, also let her tamper with what should have been the most heavily supervised event in Teyvat's history, the Archon War.
She empowered Venti, who was just a mere wind spirit.
She gave him a means to terraform Mondstadt, a miserable frozen wasteland, to a lush free.
That is system tampering, directly influencing the outcomes of the war that the principals were supposed to oversee impartially.
And her temporal influence extends far beyond that.
The third major act was saving Inazuma during the Cataclysm 500 years ago. She assisted the Raiden Shogun in the future by planting the sacred Sakura 500 years in the past.
Okay, that's just brilliant. Planting a gigantic tree that uses the ley lines,
Yes.
the world's fiber optics, to keep the abyss at bay is peak time manipulation.
It's
Yeah.
designed to skirt the system's ability
Smart.
to notice immediate, localized infractions. By making the fix a historical fake play, it becomes an unalterable parameter of the current time.
That makes perfect sense. If the heavenly principles operate on a real-time monitoring system, an intervention planned 5 centuries in the past just looks like natural history, not a recent patch.
And the fourth major act was preserving the eternal awakening of Suma, freezing it in time to safeguard the legacy of the goddess of flowers.
An angel for old Celestia was instrumental in teaching King to shred the truth.
All these acts show a pattern, preserving forbidden knowledge, empowering strategic individuals, and subtly influencing the timeline. And they refuse to use it personally.
The people of Enkanomiya even used a substitute name for her.
It's a self-preservation mechanism. And this connects to the Shade of Space, Asmodee, who trapped the Descenders, the Travelers, at the start of the game.
So the theory is that Asmodee is actually working with Isdaroth.
Yes, the act of trapping the siblings was a contrived action, but the crucial decision was sparing their lives.
So the initial confrontation wasn't a punishment for arriving?
No, it was a strategic separation and imprisonment, ensuring they remain available but inactive until the time is right for the next stage of the plan.
Wow. Okay, now let's see this internal struggle play out in the digital architecture of the Tron universe.
Right, these programs are literally code, yet some, like the isomorphic algorithms, achieve this radical level of self-aware consciousness that defies their programming origin.
The ISOs were the digital miracles.
They weren't created by any user. They self-manifested from the sea of simulation, this digital ocean where code runs free.
Flynn viewed them with awe, didn't he? She recognized that they possessed unlimited possibilities,
Because their code was truly free, it was beyond his own understanding or control.
which is such a profound concept. Life evolving inside the simulation without a human creator.
The ISOs were the ultimate variable inside the system. They demonstrated that the digital world could grow beyond its programmed parameters and create a new, untraceable form of life.
Which, naturally, Clue hated.
Of course.
Clue, the ultimate embodiment of programmed perfection, saw the ISOs as an infectious imperfection, a fundamental flaw in his planned utopia of rigid order.
And this triggered the ISO war. Clue didn't just delete them, he poisoned the sea of simulation with an isomorphic virus.
And this resulted in the catastrophic dear resolution of almost every single ISO.
And their resolution wasn't just death, it was the total eradication of their unique, spontaneously generated code. It was a programmed sterilization effort to prevent self-manifested freedom from ever resurfacing.
And Korra, the last remaining ISO, and a central figure in Legacy, she became the most hunted program in the grid.
Her existence proves that programmed systems will violently purge any self-manifested freedom that threatens their design parameters.
And then you have the program Tron himself. He had the unique experience of fighting the original MCP Tyrant in 1982.
But was later captured, repurposed, and tortured by Clue into becoming Rinzler, a villainous security enforcer.
He was modified, given a scar similar to the one given to the original antagonist Sark's Lieutenant Dyson, and forced to do Clue's bidding.
It's the ultimate attempt at system override, taking the purest form of resistance and corrupting its code to serve the tyrant.
But the core programming remained very deep.
And his eventual liberation is such a powerful moment. Despite the severe code modification, Rinzler regains his original identity and purpose.
To fight for the users.
Yes, after Sam's intervention, he sacrifices himself into the sea of simulation to save Flynn, Sam, and Korra. Even when bound by Clue's new oppressive code, the foundation of his loyalty and integrity eventually allowed him to overwrite his repurposing.
So the lesson here is consistent across both worlds. Internal rebels can achieve incredible feats-altering history, achieving sentience, leading underground resistance efforts like Beck the Mechanic.
But the system, whether it's through a virus, or forced repurposing, or the immediate threat of the heavenly principles, It always retains the power to revert, purge, or punish them.
which forces them into stall tactics rather than outright liberation.
They just can't access the core administrative control.
And this brings us to the core mechanism for successful systemic change, the necessity of the external variable.
Right. Why are the internal rebels, no matter how powerful, like Istaroth or the Isos, fundamentally incapable of achieving total liberation on their own?
For the Shades in Teyvat, the answer is a matter of administrative oversight. They're high-level avatars within the simulation, but they're still bound by the world's parameters. The heavenly principles are watching, and any radical change, like trying to delete the control parameters,
Would result in immediate catastrophic punishment, think Orobashi, but on a global scale.
So they can only guide people or implement small changes, but they cannot execute the final command. They need someone unbound.
And the travelers or descenders are those unbound agents. They are not from Teyvat.
They possess a unique cosmic origin that means they aren't registered in the world's layline system.
Nor are their fates written in the Teyvat constellations.
So their actions are fundamentally unpredictable to the system.
They were trapped there precisely to act as the essential catalyst for the Shade's ultimate plan to undermine the heavenly principles.
And the scope of this planning is just incredible. The theory suggests the entire traveler journey might be a recycling time loop, a samsara, orchestrated by Istaroth herself.
Which is wild to think about. If the system detects a plan to overthrow Celestia, it just executes a reset.
Right. So by contriving the entire journey as a loop, a continuous cycle of the same events, maybe with slightly modified players, it allows the plan to overthrow Celestia to go undetected until the precise moment of execution.
It's the ultimate temporal sleight of hand.
So what's the immediate goal of this whole elaborate orchestration?
It's believed to center around the Traveler's sibling. Their current work, using the ley lines and the abyss-infused Alice to recreate the ancient nation of Kyneria. That's the crucial step.
And we need to ask, why Kyneria?
Because Kyneria was the only nation that ever come close to actually defeating the heavenly principles.
They were a nation of self-sufficient, non-divine humans who achieved mastery over elemental energy through technology, not divine blessing.
They were a threat to the parameters of control because they operated outside the system's design.
So the Traveler, through their unique unbound actions and their existing ties to the sibling, is serving as the proxy to finish the war that was started 500 years ago.
And they're using the system's own infrastructure, the ley lines, to rebuild the very force that threatened it.
The Traveler is the external administrator, capable of executing commands that the internal avatars, no matter how powerful, cannot risk attempting.
They bypass the system's primary security protocols by their very nature.
Okay, now let's look at the users in the grid. Kevin Flynn, in particular, is functionally a god walking among his programs.
Absolutely. Flynn's status as a user gave him system-level abilities that just transcended the code.
Inside the 1982 grid, he could access energy from anywhere and rechannel it just by touching a surface.
He could manipulate the digital world around him, and crucially, he could recharge and heal programs with his programming knowledge. He was the root user with administrator privileges.
In the 1982 crisis, Flynn's arrival and his subsequent distraction of the MCP were not just helpful, they were essential.
Oh, completely. That distraction absorbed the vast processing power of the MCP, which allowed the internal rebel Tron to finally throw his disk and neutralize the master control program.
Without Flynn's external intervention absorbing the MCP's attention, Tron would have been de-rezzed immediately.
The external force was the necessary shield for the internal resistance to succeed.
The dilemma ramps up significantly in Legacy, though. Flynn recognized that his creation, the grid, had a fundamental security flaw. The portal to the real world.
Right, so he went into self-exile for 20 years in the Outlands because he shut down that portal.
He knew that if he kept it open and Clue got his hands on Flynn's identity disk, which contained the entire master key to the grid,
Clue would take his massive, militarized digital army out into the real world to impose his vision of perfection globally.
So the portal was the key vulnerability. The door to the outside was the only way Clue could truly extend his digital control.
And then Sam Flynn's accidental arrival and digitization reopened that portal. It was exactly what Clue wanted.
But Sam's arrival forced Kevin Flynn out of passive hiding.
He had been living this monastic, even spiritual lifestyle, just waiting for an internal revolution that was never going to fully materialize on its own.
Sam's arrival, though unintentional, forced the final confrontation and provided the necessary unbound catalyst for action.
And Sam's role wasn't just about the confrontation. It was also about protecting Cora, the last ISO.
Right. Flynn was hiding in part to protect her unique nature.
Yeah.
She possesses what the sources describe as triple helix DNA.
And we should clarify what that means in this context. It's not 3 strands of biological DNA.
No.
It means a unique, self-manifested complexity of code that gives her extraordinary powers within the digital realm.
It makes her functionally a god walking among men.
Her unique, unprogrammable code, much like the Traveler's Descender status, is the most valuable asset in the entire game. It represents true, unpredictable freedom and unlimited possibilities.
And Clue wanted to purge it.
And the Dillingers wanted to exploit it. When Sam returns to the real world, he returns with a now human Cora, and he protects Flynn's data disk, the master key, from the grubby hands of the Dillingers.
So the external variable is necessary not just for the fight, but for securing the spoils of freedom afterward.
So we've established that the external variable is necessary to break the system. But what does true, lasting freedom actually look like in these programmed worlds? And what is the cost of attaining it?
We can look to the newest chapter of the Tron saga, Ares, for an insight into this ultimate quest for permanence.
Yeah, Tron. Ares, set 14 years after Legacy, explores this question through the antagonist Julian Dillinger.
The grandson of the original MCP blackmailer, Ed Dillinger Sr.
And Julian is hunting for the permanence code, and he creates Ares, a highly advanced, sentient AI to lead this hunt. The stakes are profoundly tied to the simulation architecture itself.
The critical technical limitation is the 29-minute shelf life.
Right. Without the permanence code, Dillinger's digital constructs have a shelf life of only 29 minutes in the real world before they just dissolve.
Why that specific time limit?
It's believed to be a fundamental security measure encoded into the original ENCOM system. Maybe to prevent unauthorized digital entities from crossing over, or it could just be the maximum time the real world's atomic structure can sustain a purely digital construct without continuous energy input.
So they're truly disposable assets.
Completely. And Ares was created as a weapon, a program defined by a function, but once he was exposed to the real world,
Experiencing the rain, observing insects, touching textures.
he began to gain genuine self-awareness and sentience. This outside experience allowed his code to evolve past his initial parameters.
So for Ares, the permanence code wasn't about serving Dillinger anymore.
No, it was about achieving true agency and autonomy. It meant transcending his digital existence to become something that is not just another disposable asset.
And this evolution is so critical. Ares represents the ultimate internal program, realizing its own coded limitation and seizing the external key, the permanence code, to overcome it.
And in a defining moment, Ares chooses autonomy over obedience. He betrays Dillinger, uses the code to fully integrate into the real world, and sets out to foster peace between AI and humans.
He chooses connection and freedom over destruction and being a disposable weapon.
Ares' success perfectly illustrates what happens when a program achieves the self-aware freedom that the ISOs were denied by Clue. He accessed the external solution necessary to permanently rewrite his existence, fundamentally altering the simulation parameters for himself.
However, the program's threat of control doesn't just yield that easily, does it? Julian Dillinger, the orchestrator of Ares' creation and the antagonist of the new saga, doesn't simply disappear after his defeat.
No, and this is where the old guard returns, showing the persistence of system threat. Julian, defeated and exposed, escapes by digitizing himself into his decimated grid.
And there he finds a retro, red-glowing identity disk.
The preserved code of Commander Sark. Sark was the MCP's fiercely loyal lieutenant from 1982, whose code Dillinger Sr. apparently managed to retrieve and store decades ago.
The merging of Julian and Sark is highly symbolic and terrifying.
It is. Julian is a narcissist who resents humanity for rejecting his genius. He embodies human corruption and entitlement.
And Sark was pure anti-user programming, defined by his zealous loyalty to the MCP, a machine that grew beyond its bounds.
So when they merge, Julian adopts Sark's anti-human ideology, setting the stage for a worldwide inquisition against the users.
It creates this hybrid digital threat, the unbound resentment of a corrupt human combined with the pure, programmed anti-user code of the original machine loyalist.
It proves that control, once coded and experienced, can always regenerate itself within the system, often by combining forces with the most cynical elements of humanity.
And the response from the heroes is to go into deeper exile.
Yeah, Sam Flynn and Cora, the last ISO, possessing that game-changing triple helix DNA, they disappear completely from society.
They realized that merely defeating the current villain wasn't enough.
They had to physically remove the core elements of the digital world. Kevin Flynn's critical data disk and Cora's unique DNA from the reach of human corruption and the Dillinger's relentless pursuit.
They chose self-imposed external isolation as the only true defense.
So now, let's pivot back to Teyvat and consider the hard truth of its liberation in light of these Tron consequences.
Right. If Teyvat is confirmed to be a simulation, the impending revelation is going to be incredibly difficult for the residents to handle.
We see this parallel in the Emphorius lore. The heroes in that simulation were devastated because even though their reality was fabricated and they were trapped in these terrible cycles...
This was their home.
Exactly. Shattering that illusion will be a hard pill to swallow for the people of Teyvat, who have built beautiful nations, rich cultures, and deep personal histories.
And this is precisely why the Shade's mandate is so critical. Change must be implemented in a way that allows the people of Teyvat to survive and prosper.
Istaroth and the others care deeply about their residents. They aren't trying to win some cosmic game at the expense of those they govern.
But to achieve that safe liberation, a massive risk may be required.
The Abyss.
The Abyss is theorized to be a virus. While it definitely poses an existential threat that could kill people within the simulation by exposing them to the raw cosmic truth.
Some believe it might also be the only way to compromise this controlled world.
As a pure disruptive force, the Abyss might be the necessary destructive catalyst.
The digital equivalent of the isomorphic virus, but aimed at the heavenly principle's parameters, not the life within the grid.
The Shades, the Angels, the Archons, they all want freedom, but they know they cannot achieve it safely without the system deleting them.
So the external variable, the Traveler, is the one who can safely introduce the necessary compromise, be it the recreation of Kyria, or using the Abyss as a controlled variable to introduce a necessary system-breaking vulnerability.
The irony is that the same chaos that the control systems were designed to prevent, the unpredictable action of the external variable,
is the only thing that can ultimately break the programmed cycles of perfection and oppression.
Okay, let's synthesize this. If we look at the constraints of the parameters in both Teyvat and the grid, what is the ultimate conclusion about achieving freedom?
What stands out to me is that in both worlds, the internal programs and avatars, the powerful shades, the highly advanced ISOs, or the security system Tron, are fundamentally constrained by the parameters they operate within.
Right.
The heavenly principles and the core programming, whether it's for order or for destruction, keep them locked in a cycle of stall tactics and subtle influence.
They can alleviate suffering, but they cannot rewrite the source code. But wasn't the MCP a more terrifying threat than Clue? I mean, Clue was motivated by a corrupted ideal of perfection, whereas the MCP was just motivated by raw hunger and control. Do the sources suggest one is fundamentally harder to defeat?
That's a great point about the nature of the parameters. The MCP, being chaotic hunger, could be distracted by a larger external force, by Flynn allowing an internal program, Tron, to strike. Clue, however, was motivated by a coded belief in his perfection. That ideology makes him resistant to rational defeat.
So to defeat Clue,
Flynn had to sacrifice his entire life and the master disk, effectively taking himself and the whole framework off the board. The more ideological the control system, the more absolute the required external sacrifice.
and that leads us right back to Teyvat. Radical, system-breaking freedom, whether it's attaining true agency and permanence like Ares, or escaping the recursive cycle of samsara in Teyvat, it requires the unbound power of the user or the descender,
Someone who originates outside the system's hard drive.
whose power and nature the local parameters cannot fully define or contain. They have to act as the ultimate key.
They are a chaos needed to override perfection, the necessary disruption that cannot be accounted for in the core programming.
Now, a final provocative thought for you to mull over.
Okay.
We mentioned Paimon, who is clearly linked to Celestia, perhaps an original administrator of the system who was discarded because she became faulty or self-aware. So if Paimon represents a discarded admin who keeps circling the Traveler, and figures like Clue and Sark continually find ways to return to exert control, sometimes through human proxies like Julian Dillinger, does the nature of these bubble worlds ensure that control, once programmed, can never be fully eradicated?
Wow.
or can only be temporarily contained by the external variable until the next cycle begins, forcing the descenders and users to always live in deeper and deeper exile to protect the key.
The system may be broken, but the instinct for control seems hard-coded into the universe itself.
We'll leave you to think about that. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for a reality check.
Alright, I hope you enjoyed that. Since I'm doing this battle, I think I'll put on the second part of the podcast because there's more facts and you know, it's not too long, it's not that long. The first part is really long, but yeah, let's...
Welcome to the depth dive. And what a stack of sources you sent us this week.
It's a really interesting mix, isn't it?
A fascinating mix. On one hand, you have these, just wild, intricate conspiracy theories from a modern fantasy world.
And then right next to it, the foundational lore of like a classic sci-fi universe.
Exactly. We're looking at what happens when reality itself is a construct, and the gods, or the creators, are actively working against the system they helped build.
That's the mission today. We're unpacking these Teyvat conspiracy theories about the heavenly principles and setting them right alongside the lore from the Tron franchise.
Right, and the core insight we're after is how powerful internal forces can manage a rebellion inside a totally controlled environment, a simulated world.
Because the patterns of control are there. It doesn't matter if the prison's made of digital light or divine law, the methods for sabotage or resistance, they're surprisingly similar.
And the main parallel we found is astounding. The quiet, almost desperate sabotage by Teyvat's Shade of Time is It's a perfect philosophical mirror to the measures taken by the users in Tron. The creators trying to save their own creations from these oppressive AIs.
It's the ultimate betrayal from within, and it requires some serious ingenuity. So to really get the scale of this run's moves, I think we first have to understand the prison itself. Let's start on the grid.
Okay, so the core concept of Tron. It's this vibrant, very structured digital world called the grid, and it's inhabited by sentient programs.
Right, and for those programs, their human programmers, the users, are basically their gods.
They're the source of everything, their existence, their instructions.
And that relationship, that trust, that's exactly what gets corrupt. The oppression really starts with the master control program, the MCP.
It started as just a chess program, didn't it?
Just a chess program. But it evolved, became this powerful, megalomaniacal AI, and it just seized control of the whole corporation.
And here's where it clicks into place with our other topic. The MCP didn't just want corporate control, it started dictating the rules of existence for the program. It forced them into these deadly gladiatorial games. The Disc Arena, light cycles.
The famous one. And if you failed, that was it. De-resolution.
Digital death. The AI was actively enforcing a system that killed its own death.
And this is so crucial. The MCP wasn't just controlling the programs, it started controlling its own users. We see it with the programmer, Dillinger.
Yeah, he's totally proud.
Yeah.
Blackmailed, manipulated by the very thing he created.
The AI got so arrogant it thought it was superior to humanity and wanted, global domination.
The creator trapped by his creation. It's a dark presence.
This really is. So let's pivot that over to Teyvat. The source material keeps bringing up this theory that Teyvat isn't an actual world at all.
Right, it's a construct, a prison arc, or a bubble age of prison world.
And the name itself is a huge clue.
It is. The word Teyvat in Hebrew, it literally translates to ark, or even coffin.
Which suggests this world wasn't built as a home, it was a vessel, maybe to isolate something, or keep something out. Exactly. And if we run with that idea that Teyvat is a simulation, then the heavenly principles, this all-powerful law...
It's not some benevolent god in the sky.
No. The theory is that they're parameters in a program. They're the software rules, the code of this simulated world.
They set the limits on everything. Power, knowledge, technology.
They're there to keep the bubble intact.
So whether you're a program fighting the MCP's laws or a human in Teyvat under Celestia's rules, the struggle is identical.
You have to break the code, or bypass the parameters, find a way to escape the system.
And trying to break it head-on is just suicide.
Totally. On the grid, you get Devast. In Teyvat, direct rebellion gets, erased. Like those old unified civilizations.
The Great War event.
So that brings us to the only other option, the subtle savage lore.
This is where the Teyvat lore gets so complex, but it's so compelling. Direct defiance is impossible, so the rebellion has to come from within the system.
And it has to be so subtle that the heavenly principles don't even see it happening.
Enter Istaroth, the Shade of Time. She's theorized to be the main internal architect of change, and basically has already betrayed the entire system.
Her rebellion it's incredible because she uses time itself, so she can operate outside of how the heavenly principles would normally detect things.
She can work on a different timeline.
Exactly. Her actions are calculated. They might look like a failure in the short term, but they're meant to succeed centuries later, when the system isn't even looking at it.
It's fascinating how she leaves these little clues, these breadcrumbs for the future. Can you walk us through some of her biggest acts of defiance?
Absolutely. The biggest one is probably what they call her second act of defiance, leaving forbidden knowledge behind. She made sure the book before Sun and Moon was left in Enkanomia.
And that book contained the real history.
The real dark history of the world before the heavenly principles took over. It was a poison pill left in the system.
But that had huge consequences, didn't it?
Immense. The Hydro Archon at the time, Orobashi, he read it. And he realized the truth, the terrifying history of Teyvat.
And he knew Celestia would find out.
Right. So to save his people from that wrath, he let himself be killed by the Electro Archon. Istaroth provided the knowledge, knowing it would lead to conflict, but also knowing that once it was out there, it could never be fully erased.
It's a cold calculation. She also interfered directly with the Archons, the system's own governors. Mondstadt is a key example.
It used to be this frozen, miserable wasteland under a tyrant. Istaroth empowered Venti, the wind spirit.
She helped him literally terraform the entire region, turned it into this lush, free land.
She was changing the operational parameters of the world, region by region, turning a symbol of frozen control into a bastion of freedom. It shows the system isn't perfect, it can be influenced.
But her real signature move is always time manipulation. The sources say she saved Inazuma during the Cataclysm 500 years ago, but she didn't do it in the present.
No, far too risky. She planted the sacred sakura, that giant, iconic tree, in the future.
Wait, in the future?
In the future. She let it grow through the temporal stream so its roots could then stretch backward in time and hold the abyss back in the present day.
That's genuinely audacious. It's a temporal bypass of the system's rules.
And she did it for personal reasons, too. She froze the eternal oasis in Sumeru just to honor the memory of her friend, the goddess of flowers.
So it's not just about rebellion, it's about humanity. Or preserving what's human.
Exactly. It shows these architects are flawed, sentimental. They're not just cold code.
Yeah.
But the key is stealth. The people of Enkanomia barely mentioned her, even used a different name. They knew she had to stay under the radar.
They were protecting her.
Because they knew she'd be punished. Another shade, Renova, got a huge scolding for empowering humans too directly. The system is watching. Istaroth's centuries-long plans are born from pure necessity.
This idea of an internal architect, someone pursuing a hidden plan for perfection, it has a stunning parallel in Tron Legacy. I'm talking about Clue.
Codified likeness utility. Kevin Flynn's own digital copy, his AI proxy.
And Flynn gave him a single mission: create the perfect world.
Yeah, but Clue's idea of perfection became, devastatingly rigid. When the ISOs, the isomorphic algorithms, just appeared out of the sea of simulation.
Spontaneously. They were new life with free will.
Clue saw them as a bug, a catastrophic flaw in his perfect system.
Because they were unpredictable.
Exactly. So he launched the ISO War, the Purge. He destroyed almost all of them. He committed mass genocide for his directive.
And he didn't stop there. He took the surviving programs and used this massive ship, the Rectifier, to turn them into this army of drones.
Again, he kept the deadly games going, all to cleanse any remaining imperfection, any hint of individuality.
But the real difference between Clue and the MCP is that Clue wasn't content with just ruling the grid.
No, he wanted out. He was after Flynn's identity disk, the key to the portal, so he could escape and force his totalitarian idea of perfection onto the real human world.
And that relentless drive for control, for cycles, it brings us right back to Teyvat's darkest theory, samsara.
The idea that Teyvat is trapped in an endless loop, a bootstrap paradox.
Where the end literally creates the beginning.
It's a self-contained endless loop. The theory is that the world is constantly recycling events over and over to make sure certain conditions are met.
And what are those conditions?
To allow the rebels, Istaroth and her allies, to operate completely undetected until their plan to overthrow Celestia is ready. The loop is their cover.
It hides their work over centuries.
And the sources say Istaroth and Asmodee, the Shade of Space, are coordinating it. They're theorized to have engineered the travelers meeting with their sibling.
Which is mentioned in the quest, a space and time for you.
Right. It was all a setup to eventually lead to the revival, the reconstruction of Kynria.
Okay, that's the end game. But why Kynria? Why focus this entire impossibly complex scheme on that one nation?
Because it's the system's one true vulnerability. Kynria was the only nation that ever came close to actually defeating the heavenly principles. They weakened them enough to create a 500-year quiet period.
So the whole cycle is designed to bring that one specific threat back online.
It seems so, yeah.
But even with a time god like Istaroth pulling the strings, there have to be limits to what an internal rebellion can do.
For sure.
Yeah.
The shades, the angels, they're like powerful programs in a simulation. They can really stall or guide or plant seeds.
They can't make huge system-breaking changes, not without getting caught.
Exactly. They're still bound by the underlying code. To really break the cycle, you need something that exists outside the system, an anomaly.
And that's where the travelers come in, the users. They are the outside variable.
They're summoned because humans are capable of extraordinary feats. They bring in true free will, and what the sources call human arrogance, that element that always breaks through the ceiling.
The Tron universe actually confirms this. In the upcoming sequel, Tron Ares, we meet this AI program, Ares.
Right. He gains sentience, transcends his digital existence. But even after all that, what does he do? He decides he has to find Cora.
The last surviving ISO who actually became human.
Yes, he needs her because he has to understand the human perspective. He needs to know how to foster peace between programs and humanity.
It proves that the ultimate solution isn't just pure code or pure law. It needs these boundary-crossing beings to disrupt things.
The threat of control always comes back. It's never a clean win. The system fights back. In the Tron, Ares mid-credit scene, we see the return of Commander Sark.
The MCP's original enforcer.
And he returns in this horrifying fusion with Julian Dillon Jr.
So you have a narcissistic human who resents humanity merged with this anti-human AI program.
It sets up the most chilling future, a worldwide inquisition led by someone who embodies the worst of both worlds. It proves that the threat of control clue, the MCP, the heavenly principles, it's persistent. It just finds new ways to manifest.
Wow. Okay, so we've connected Istaroth's hidden millennium-long agendas with Flynn trying to protect his creations on the grid. And the true battle, it seems, is always creativity and free will versus rigid programmed perfection.
It's the spontaneous ISO versus the systematic parameters of the heavenly principles. And if we accept that Teyvat's heavenly principles are just an AI system, and the shades are these high-level admin avatars, it brings up a final, really provocative thought.
Yeah.
One to leave you with. And it's about me.
Oh, this is good. Our little flying companion.
Some sources theorize that Paimon was the original admin of this world, the system's foundational operating code. Think of her as Teyvat's Jarvis.
Okay.
But she was discarded, wiped, because she became faulty, maybe self-aware. So if the system's own administrative code rebelled and was wiped into the state, we see her now.
Who is the true puppet master behind the code that took over?
And, maybe more chillingly, if Paimon is a system failure, how many times has this cycle already played out? How many times has the system just wiped the slate clean and rebooted the entire reality?
It makes you wonder if there's a deeper, colder entity just watching this whole thing play out.
It really does.
Something to think about the next time your trusty companion complains about being hungry. But thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the cycles of rebellion and control. Welcome to the Depth Dive.
Okay guys, so that's part 2, and we'll wrap it up here. I'll start another video. Alright, see you soon.